Okay. Let's start this madness for another day. Of course, I got 10 minutes without coughing, and then the moment I had to start talking, start coughing. Because why not? Let's move this over here. Clean up. So, today. So, I have been struggling to understand the different concepts within NRGX signalStore, because I think that the technology is the right choice for what I'm trying to achieve. I can't see another option that's valid, short of hacking everything together with just straight up client requests everywhere. So I'm just continually hitting the server and I'm continually pulling the data, etc. That would be an option, but it's not one I think is a good option for the size of the application I'm building. But I feel that I'm using the technology incorrectly. I feel that I'm not benefiting from it. And I'm trying to figure out what the best way of learning that is. Let me remove that for a second. Delete anyway. Yeah. I don't need selected entity. So, yesterday, when I left this, I was struggling to get it to add and remove the items from the store, and I kind of got that working again. But now I'm in a position of I'm not sure how that helps me. So they advertise. Well, they're not advertise. They indicate you can use some methods. So in the basic store, consuming state, you create a state object and you manipulate that state. And with initial state, you can manipulate that and work with the state in here, and things kind of work. So this store has a collection of books, is loading some filters, some queries, etc., and some methods and computed properties, right? And that's great. But then on the when you start to drive down the rest of the actual library, they introduce new concepts. So here, lifecycle hooks, on init, on destroy, right? You can actually listen to these things, so you can do things. Okay, that's great. But then you get the custom store features, and these actually are features that they provide almost, kind of as examples. But yeah, and you can combine signalStore features into one. So again, I'm back in the boat of I really am going to have to learn if I want to proceed with the application. I have little to no choice but to build a working version of this in this planning items thing and really get a handle on it. At the moment, I'm in that despair phase of, oh, have I just spent a month of my time trying to build this, and I'm going to end up rewiring it all, or I'm going to have to gut it. If this was a real product, I'd now be a month behind. And I'd have nothing really to show, right? Which would be bad. One other option I have, one other option I have is to try and find YouTube videos or course content that helps describe some of this stuff. And I've scanned through a bit. And one of the worries I have right this second is I still have this nested collection problem, right? So what I did last night is I realized that the way that this was talking about adding using the methods for, was it this piece? So they introduce no, sorry, entity management here. The entities entity map, and you can use this with entities, right? And with that, you can then do add entity, add entities, set entity, update entity, etc. Right? So I'm like, oh well, that's that'll work for me, right? So what I realized was to do that, I had to get rid of my state. My state had to be the entities. So all my initial state, etc., went away, and I now have no need for the state because now I'm just setting the entity. So if I want to load the entities up, I just do set all entities, right? If I want to update an entity, I can do that, right? Load detail for, and then I just update the entity, right? So now in that world, right? I can go here, I can load, and now all my entities, all my requirements load. Great, awesome, this is fantastic. That's exactly what I want to happen. Now I want to add a requirement. So how do I do that? Well, I need to update the requirements of that thing. So how can I do that using update entity? I don't know, because getting the actual entities out is nightmarish now, right? So this set pending, etc. This was confusing me. Because it was like, okay, well, you're kind of setting the state, but then the state is the objects as well. So how does this work, right? And what I think is true is you can do with state, and you can actually set you can actually set multiple states. So I don't get that. So how do I learn this technology? How do I get through this? Well, and am I doing something wrong by having this nested collection? Right. This is the problem, right? If it was just the requirements, then then maybe I could sorry, I'm having that kind of hold on. Maybe let's try something. What if there is a planning item state? And that looks like export planning item state. Yeah, and that is planning items. It's loading, right? Is we'll worry about that later. So if we have a planning item state, and then in here, so I've been thinking of this as at this level, right? What happens if I do that at a different level and do it in here and do with state? So what I'm wondering is if this is actually able to focus the actions on a certain part of the state, of the overall state. So the overall state can be one object, but then you can say, hey, you're going to focus on this component. In which case this is really good, because then I can actually planning item store. I don't think with initial state matters there. So I'm wondering if the features can be used kind of narrow the data set, in which case then I can put all the functions for working with requirements under one feature. So I could actually rejig this to be requirements feature, and then it's still in the same signal store, but I have then focus on requirements. You can't genericize that? I thought you could. Yeah, you can. So at this point, I don't care about breaking things, right? I don't care about things not functioning or being all over the place. I've got to commit to understanding this a lot more and getting the features out. Now, the problem is the documentation itself does not give me this indication, right? It doesn't, it's not. Sorry. It's not easy to understand, and I don't get. I've read through this multiple times. I've gone through the code. What am I looking at? Entity management. So, with entities is an extension to facilitate CRUD operations for managing entities. It shares similarities with entity, but it's part of the signal store. It doesn't include methods for backend communication. You have to implement them yourself. That's fine. So, does the with entities work across the store, or does it work here? If it works here, so the problem is that if your state is not focused on the entities, right, then all these methods don't work, is what I learned yesterday. So until I made the signal store with entities planning item, right, and only made them, like you can see here, only made it so that I was manipulating entities here, nothing else worked, right? So I couldn't merge the two concepts, right? I can't do update entity, add entity, remove entity, etc. if I'm doing this without the with entities. It just doesn't work that way. So my thought here is, well, maybe this is going to with state. So that now works. So does that? So that loads. But that's the query. That will always work because with state. Doesn't like that one, does it? Why doesn't it like that one? See, I think that's working because I'm telling it the shape of it, and I think this is going, no, well, let's see if it breaks still. Okay, so that's still querying. That's still working. So now if we add a requirement, new requirement, the requirement. See, that doesn't add down. Well, it wouldn't add down there, would it? We got a breakpoint. New requirement. So requirement number 99. This is a requirement. These will actually get there, by the way. Oh, there we go. Okay. That's because I'm not subscribing on the other side. Yeah. Yeah. That's going to change the way this works. I piped it, and I should probably make that subscription still because I do care about when this happens. It's not. If I don't subscribe on the other side of this, that's why that is add requirement. Where's all my type hinting gone? Add planning item. Yeah, that's not right. I need to return that subscription. Or that'll work. Yeah, more things to learn. Create a new requirement number. Oh, come on. Did I? So what I'm looking for here, oh, it's like things are starting to work. So I've got a result back. This result, Mr. Jones, hello, afternoon. How are you doing? How are you feeling? From what I read in the well-being channel, not too great. That is very familiar. So can I investigate the store here, right? So I wish this worked, but it doesn't work for signalStore. So Redux is meant to allow me to see the store. I feel fine other than this cough. Yep. I did another karate class last night. No issues at all. But this cough will not go away. So, can I look at any of this? So I don't have planning items because planning items is a state. So how do I merge that in there then? How do I get planning items to have the current state of the actual store? Because then I could... So I'm thinking there is if I could do something like... see, again, the challenge here is that I don't know what to look for. The technology is pretty new, so I can't ask GPT. My use case is I am trying to touch a nested entity, a nested list within a list within the store. So how do I do that? Because that is working, essentially. That's giving me that state, but it's giving me an empty list. Hey, Patrick, how you doing? Oh, she's driving me nuts. Just go to the code. Just another day in paradise, absolutely. Have you been having this horrendous rain? Our roof leaked last night because it just did not stop raining yesterday whatsoever. So my wife was sat on the sofa and she's like, huh? So, because if I could use the state to kind of focus on the thing I need to work on. I did finish the thing you might find neat, actually. Oh, nice. So, well, that worked. But did that work regardless of that, is the challenge. Right? When did you finish? So that's working. But is it working? Because when I load into... When I go into here... What's that? In Greyhack, you finish a script that takes a base 64 encoded PNG, decodes it, parses it, and renders it as code. Nice. Right. Being productive. That's incredible, building that sort of stuff in there. That's very cool. And I can't even get data on the screen properly. So I think that works regardless. If I remove that, yeah. So this feature gives me the ability in my code to basically say, I'm working on a module-based terminal UI, so I can subdivide a full-screen terminal into a bunch of async info modules too, since window management isn't really a thing in the game. That's incredible, just building that sort of, like, being able to build that sort of stuff in a game is, that's impressive. So what this is meant to give me, right? I'm meant to be able to have access to that, right? So let's prove that out, right? So it doesn't complain about that, right? H45, yeah, that often used markup. So when we add planning item, no, not add planning item. I don't want to add planning item. What am I doing? That's the problem. I was in add requirement before. Let's do that again. Is pending. So we add a requirement. We go in here. We set pending, and then we're going to wait. So we want to see is pending. Testing. This is a thing. See, that went away. So that then so we're not returning the subscription. This is so confusing. And I don't know how to, like, where do I, if you've got the docs and the docs don't make it clear how to combine these things, how do people understand how to progress past the basics, right? Where do I take this? Like, unless I'm missing some magic phrasing in here that tells me all I need to know, how do I know to even do this? How do I know to do this, right? Magic, intuition. It's what separates the wheat from the chaff. Well, right now I'm 100% the chaff. And it's driving me nuts because it's like, why is this so hard? Let's remove that. I want to see that it changes the state, right? That's what I'm looking for at the second. So testing, test. You see it? Pending. So that is a version of the state on here, right? So I'm telling it, hey, you're going to be this. And when I set pending, that is a reactive state. Yeah, and honestly, that's exactly why I stream. Because I think a lot of people make this sort of stuff look easy, but you don't see all the scrambling they've done to get to where they make it look easy. Or they've taken examples, pieced it together, and they can't piece it back together again. And for the problem with this one is, right, this seems like how do I put it? This seems like the right technology, right? For what I'm trying to achieve, this seems like the right technology. But how do I break beyond the bounds? If I just stick everything in from their tutorial or from their guide, right? like, I understand some of the concepts. I understand what it's doing. I understand that basically this is giving me a bunch of objects that I can monitor, and I can, and we saw it there, right? We saw that changed to pending when I changed the state of that object to pending. So state is kind of this weird manipulated object, right? Because I've got a list of items. I've got a list of data. So if I go to this one here, I've said with state and with entities, and then I've gone and set all my entities in the store, right? So it's kind of like I'm focusing it on that component. But I don't understand how to combine these things properly. I'm not learning anything from doing this. I'm struggling through. Hey, Dota, how you doing? Well, I hope. So I've got a few options here, right? Just making coffee before work. That's good. It's good. So one option, and I've kind of done it already. I've kind of been looking, right, is to try and find some examples, right? So this guy does this, right? It's kind of why I was on that path, right? Okay, so what does that mean? How do I do that, right? So I can kind of try and follow through someone else's examples. I'll be honest, I don't find it very easy to watch other people's videos all the time. I kind of want to get to why you're doing what you're doing. So this guy made a pretty good video. This is pretty solid. So I've got that as an option. Another option I have is trying to see if there's Pluralsight courses, and then taking the hit on a chunk of money to sign up for Pluralsight again. It's rare I watch a video of what you're showing there. Right. So how do you learn this technology? Right. That's kind of my general question right now. Is like, for you as a developer, and you being everyone, how do you pick up a technology if the documentation is a little bit on the because this does not give me the tools I need to go forward. Yeah, new tech to you. Right. This does not give me the tools I need to go forward. I've got to actually go off and understand what. And that's kind of what I'm missing. Like, what am I missing? Copilot doesn't know about this technology. It's too new. Well, it kind of does, but it kind of gives you the wrong answers. Because this is a relatively new piece. I use Pluralsight Udemy for an introduction, then do the getting started in the side project. Nobody ever goes into the details I want with programming docs. I don't want to know that it works. I want to know why it works. I rarely learn enough to actually extrapolate that information. Like an 8-hour course or less seems ideal. So you would use Pluralsight. So I gotta spend $300. I don't. Because again, maybe I'm stupid, right? Maybe I'm dense here, and I just don't understand what I'm looking at, right? They do. I kind of prefer the pay one chunk. So yeah. Well, if you guys could watch the NGRX tutorials and let me know. I'm getting together a lightning talk on side projects. I'll link you to it in the Discord at some point. Nice. So what this is saying, what that's saying basically was, so this add requirement, right? What they're saying is they recommend doing this. So export function set update requirement. Now this is going to be interesting. How do I do that? Because they're saying that is, they recommend making the state update as a standalone function, so something like that, and doing it inside of actual methods here, but they don't show an example of doing it that way because they have methods to do that. Logging, creating a custom feature with input, so with state, selected state, not messing around with that. And then they go into this weird and wacky, wonderful thing. Who's and bars and bazes. It's also possible to define expected computed properties and methods in the following way. Where does that apply? What do I do with that? Right. The with baz feature can only be used in a store where the computed property foo and the method bar are defined. So, okay, so it's telling me that those have to be defined for this to be functional. Okay, so that's what that's really telling me. It's like, okay, you can tell it to filter and say, okay, this signalStore feature can only be applied on something that provides these things. Right? But there's other things, by the way, that there's, I saw this somewhere else. Where are you? No. Where did I see this defined? So I'm considering these as with query with write right now. I don't think that's the right way to think about these. So that's going to bite me eventually. I get that. This one is from them, right? So this is the status. Oh, you were thinking of using NRGX. I don't see any other option. For what I want to do, I don't think it's wise to do anything else. And it's actually not NRGX. It's actually, so the funny thing is, right? NRGX. They have the store, effects, router state entity, component store as signals, right? People refer to signals and signal stores as opposed to store or component store. So NRGX is a brand across many different things at this point. But it seems hard to write testable code with it. I'm not worried about the testable code right now. That's a whole different challenge. That's something I've got to learn later on, and once I get an understanding of this, I will I'll feel more comfortable with that. But well, this is RxJS and stuff anyway. It is all RxJS anyway. It's all built on those sorts of technologies. But for what I'm trying to achieve, I want to build this application that is pretty strong on the client. I've got all this data moving around. I feel there's a great benefit in having the stores there, right? Yeah, the RxJS, yeah. reactive extensions for JavaScript. Yeah, but I think the problem with this, and that a couple of years ago, I got my team. Michael Jolly did a specific stream for us because he took us through NRGX store and how to use it because we were looking at using the technology. And at the time, my team was like, "Ooh, I don't like the way that works. I don't want to do that because we're storing all the state and all the behavior in the client, right?" And I can kind of see it, but now I'm looking at the way I'm doing this. I'm not really doing that. I'm kind of buffering the data essentially, right? I'm essentially caching the data in a place where I can manipulate it, I can react to it, I can change it behind the scenes without actually making explicit actions. I can do all sorts of other things. So definitely see the benefits of doing this. But I don't want to become an expert. No, I think it's a must-have for what. Again, this is kind of in the bucket of considering the application I'm trying to build. My only other option would be to wire all this up by hand, and I think that would be far messier, far more troublesome. And I don't think there's. I think there might be another library. There might be something. No, this can't be a simple fetch at this point, considering what I'm trying to do. Because there's just way too much to go back on at that point. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like, the right time to do that sort of stuff. But the problem is the client side is just going to grow so quickly once the starting features in. So I'm kind of focused on this piece and trying to learn this technology in the focus of this one item so I can grow out. And if I find that my time is wasted and that this is actually an absolute nightmare to do going forward, then I've got to look at other options. But I think the other option, the options I know, certainly your first page needs to mutate a lot. Initially, adding that will have boilerplate, right? But I don't want to proceed into the application stack without a solid grounding in what I'm doing here, right? So that's why I'm persevering and maybe moaning a little bit. It's looking amazing. Thank you, DVC. I've looked at NGX enough to have an opinion, so I know about I confuse about. No, it's the ideas are. I think it is a technology that people become very strong in. But the problem is all the samples show a very simple case. And I'm out of the box using a case that is not simple, right? So I have a nested collection. If I was just using one item right, so I'm kind of what I'm trying to learn here is not just how to effectively use this library, is what practices do I need to put in place? What patterns should I see? Right. And I'm listening to that voice, right? The voice that says, this is more painful than it should be, right? It's more messy. People are showing off examples of this working and it looks nice and clean. But when I get to it, it's this massive spaghetti, right? I'm listening to that voice that says there's something wrong with the way I'm using the technology. So I keep trying to iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate, because again, this is going to be something that is going to set my patterns going forward. And yeah, I would kick the can and do a simple case as my first try. I really don't see the benefit in kicking the can right now, because again, if I move forward into the application, then I've got a whole lot of code that's sat there doing the wrong thing. When do I choose to do this, right? If I follow the paths I would normally do, and that would be everything's going to just wire up to a service, and that service is going to query the data. I'm going to load the data straight into the page. I'd have to I'd have to do a whole lot more coding, and that code would be messier. And when do I choose to pull this technology in? When I know it's a technology that can help me. Consider things like, okay, well, if I, let me see now. If I do a new item, I do a sample item. This is a sample planning item for 2024, assigned to Jane Smythe. What are you doing now? Oh, there you go. Right. So you see that notification up there. If this refresh button appears because it knows that this item has changed. So I've come in behind and said, okay, this item, by the way, has actually had changes applied to it. Right now, there's no real changes, but it's kind of like that sort of reactivity, that sort of ability to understand the data has changed comes with all this technology, right? So there's a big benefit to it, right? Connie, hello. Rolls in with a big wave of untargeted rage against the system. How you doing, Connie? So yeah, I'm trying to grow out here. I'm not trying to language. So many APIs. Hope you make a great job. Don't know why Twitch allows that on the channel by default. There we go. You can say that. That's fine. Sorry. It'll be a side project. So I suspect that I'm trying to do something that is not either. Thank you, Dota. Have a great day of work. May it be quick and entertaining. So I do suspect that maybe I'm trying to do something that is a little bit more outside the norm, right? But it can't be that hard, right? It can't be that outside the norm. So I've got to learn how to apply this. So this does give me a state object that has that, but now the issue is this. So if I go in here and I go to create, and I go 9. Right. So my store, I have is pending. I have the methods. I have the entities. So I can do what I want here. Okay. How do I get? Because I bet you I can't set dot. Let requirement let planning item equal Stored entities. Filter F goes to FID equals. Let's just do it in the code. So what I'm trying to do there is let item equal, that. Oh no, okay, find. Find gives me 1, okay. But then I need to do, well, actually, hold on. Maybe I can do this. Why don't you like that? It's a planning item. It has requirements. Oh, hold on. That's that, and that's that, and that's that. Else that. Okay. Still don't like some of this. I still gotta figure out some of this stuff because it's like, oh, I did not realize ads were running. My apologies. Ooh, WebStorm 2024. Does that mean Rider 2024 is available? Guess we'll find out afterwards. Okay, so we go in here. One final requirement. Things should actually work. Yeah, probably not what I wanted to happen. But that didn't load. That didn't change that. Didn't break, but it didn't work. So let's do that. Let's remove that out so we don't leave that sat there. And then this should be and not store that is pending. So again, it knows the state. It knows that it's got that state. But this doesn't. I can't use that. That's Does each feature get? Well, that did not change the state. That's the problem. So if I go in here now, that'll be there. One final requirement, right? But what should happen is when I do this, actually, let's go find a emptier we need to have escape do that. Okay. So requirement number 1. When I hit create, that should appear. That's not appearing. I mean, notifications aren't working either, but that's impressive. Because this is happening. This then happens all the time, right? Whether that's actually fired or not. Oh, there you go. So it did. It does know that the state of this entity has changed, right? That's what that's telling me. Oh, okay. That was the notification for this one. So it did load, and it did tell me that this entity has changed. But it did not update the requirements on that entity at all. Because that. Let's see if add planning item works still. What's the part of the code that updates the requirements on the entity? Here. So I pull the entity. So this only gets triggered once I've actually saved the entity, the requirement, right? Because the idea is it will return its ID so that I have a tracking identifier. So the entire purpose of using the store here is consistency. If I'm working on this application, I want to be able to manipulate that data, update the data, change the data, even if the backend isn't fully available yet. While this session is alive, right? If I load in from a different client, it's not going to be there. That's okay. But from a continuity perspective, it would help to have this information confirmed as being there. So let's go here. If we add a new planning item, well, we'll confirm that in a second. New planning item for Thursday. This is it's just test data. I don't need to be worrying about the spelling. 05/2024. Jane Smythe. So when I go down to the bottom here now, that is adding. So this add entity here is functioning still. So I have no reason to believe this wouldn't work. Right. So what this is meant to do is, okay, well, for this planning item identifier, patch this element of that data. So let's go see if this part happens, right? So when we add in here, my apologies for the coughing. First requirement. So we are getting in there. That's F10, F10. Do we have an item? Yes, we do, right? And it has 0 requirements. So then when we patch state, well, that's that. Let's see if we can get that again. Still no data. Oh. It's treating it as Let's see if that changes it, because if that's an empty list, well, actually, I would have been able to determine that because I would have been able to add one. No, because I couldn't add one to an existing. So that saved. It was saved. Let's see if we can change a new one. First requirement. I can't do it. See actual requirements. There we go. So the reason I knew that was working is because this doesn't load automatically. That refresh here, that appears when the server says, oh, by the way, I have got that data now, right? And we get the notification, the requirements changed for sample item with review date, right? Okay. So that's not horrendous. It's a lot cleaner than it used to be. It is achievable. I still don't understand this, so I'm going to continue on a path of learning there. So we can load so the idea is that when we go in to the when we go into the let me demonstrate something. How do I do this part? There's a flaw. So when I add something through the actually let's go clean a load of data out. Okay. When I add a new planning item, first planning item, this is a new planning item that we're going to demonstrate reload failing for 04, 05, 2024. So if I hit create and then refresh, right, that's gone, right? And that's gone because that planning item hasn't made the full journey, right? So I don't want to load data from GraphQL unless I tell it to load, right? So now if I reload, it's there. It should be. Yeah. So now that is in the view. And that is because dark mode. Open. Documents. Where is it? Where are you? What does the SkyDraw file look like? Layout with client. There we go. So you refuse to save that diagram. Whatever. So the client is here. It makes a request. It makes a request to save. it saves that in the planning item, that publishes a Kafka event or planning item integration. That gets consumed by Kafka. The view consumes it. It reads through. So what I want to do is disconnect. And the reason I'm using the store is because I want to disconnect the store from the loading, so that the store can be updated and added to, etc. For continuity. Like if I control R, I've lost it anyway, right? It's gone. But while I've not, it shouldn't reload. So next planning item. Right, so if I go back there, that's gone now. Because now the store, when I go into planning, it's going to make the GraphQL call. Well, it's done. It's there now. So that is, in distributed computing, that is eventual consistency, right? That is, it will be there, just eventually, right? The benefits, to me, the benefits do warrant the cost, right? So the benefit is I have a very focused write database here, so I can do calculations or I can insert data quickly. That data is then published straight out, and this read database can be highly optimized for the read scenario. I don't have one database serving two purposes, right? So there's a great benefit in doing this way. But the cost is it is disconnected. If these services are unavailable, this read database might not get updated for a while, right? I can bring down pieces of the system without worrying about losing data, because I definitely have it in a place. The only systems that can't be brought down for real are these systems. Those would need to be brought down at the same time as the client, because you can't have, or they'd have to be able to tell the client this part of the system is unavailable, right? So the benefits do warrant the cost. But what I had initially done was actually put a UI grade graphic. What I'd initially done is put a kind of flag on the store to say don't reload, right? Which I think I could actually I might be able to get away with putting that back on again. The request state. Let's see. With state. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? Oh, export style. Sorry to do with it. So I had a flag that is set to try to prevent the store from reloading and querying all the time. UI great graphic, the DB architecture, I mean. Yeah, I mean, if there's any questions about what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to ask. I'm always happy to discuss it and kind of go through why. States. No, it just takes time to update. Yeah, yeah. It's certainly challenging in that respect. So why does that one not like this request status update? Is that state works fine? Expected one arguments. Okay, I mean that's fine. Is loading false? So you gotta provide all the data for it. So let's call that. We don't need planning items there. Let's call this. What would this be? Let's call it refresh state for right this second. Is and this would be what am I trying to represent? I'm trying to say, hey, you don't need to actually go get the data. Is current, right? So then what we're doing here is is current. So patch state. No. If not store is current. So this state thing baffles me. It's kind of like this manipulatable object. If this is kind of, and then you can do is current true, right? So that's why they recommend in here. What you do is export function set current boolean and that's a refresh state. Return value, right? And then in here you can do set current true. And that way, maybe. So what would happen now is we go to new item and we add our third planning item. 04, 05, 2024. When we add that and navigate away, it should still be there, right? Now, the challenge is now I will not load from GraphQL, right? So any updates to these entities are now going to come from, if I don't reload, any updates to these entities are going to be broken, right? Because I don't load anything but the requirements in when I patch the state. So that's kind of why that is there, right? That's actually just indicating to me that it does know that the state of this object, so that is based upon when I get a notification, I actually mark the entity as having pending updates, right? And actually, Hmm. Um, so I could potentially calculate the state of this as there's pending updates. I should reload it, right? The problem there is if I go and add a new item and then it says, oh, pending updates, I'll reload, that item could disappear because that item isn't already there and it's not actually part of those pending updates. So then pending updates gets updated again a few minutes later. Let's terminate that in a second. Switch to like, it looks like they've started to roll out the 2024 releases of the, did that not reload? Yeah, it is. It's kind of cool, a program to manage 3 different databases, and for each database is a program. There's a DBA API custom made. Yeah, I'll introduce you in a second. So I'll leave that up in a second. So what I'm building is probably should run it. So I'm building an Agile Project Management platform, right? And the goal is to have many different components of the system. So again, planning and ticketing are 2 separate components as I treat them. I'll show you the actual code base. Tenant management is kind of like, okay, when I add a new customer, when I add a new person in here, I want to be able to look at their data separate from the other person's data, right? So signing in accounts, etc. Sign in. Users, no. Tenant management. Users. I think I know this password by now, but I don't know this password by now. It's kind of interesting. So when I sign in, I see planning right now. So the application stack itself is this, right? So we have planning, teams, tenant management, tickets, and the view, right? So the view is its own project. And basically these are not microservices. It's kind of a mini monolith architecture in that these are individual components of my system that are broken down into several pieces in themselves, right? So ticketing is its own service collection, right? Tenant management is its own components. Teams will be their own components. Planning is its own component. Most of what you're seeing right now is all through planning, right? But the goal is each of these systems is independently testable, deployable, etc. Right? And a component can consist of one or many services. Right? So here there's an API, right? And then there's this code, right? There's an API here. There's an API here. Now the ticketing system. Oh, I need to. What did I do there? Start edge apparently. I need to run and help with. Go away, Edge. Go away, Edge. I'll be right back.
Sorry about that.
His settled day. Unsettled day.
Very cool. Just intrigued by the time it takes to do the entire circle. It doesn't take very long. Realistically, for the most part, you'll see it appear within a second or two. Right, and that's kind of why I'm focusing on the whole consistency, the continuity piece, right? Because from a client perspective, if you can continue working on the thing you're working on, you're good, right? So if I hit create and then I do first requirement, that's how long it took. That did a full circle, right? So what that did, when I hit that create, it went up to the server, it added a requirement, it gave me back the ID, it then published an event to Kafka. Kafka received that event, a consumer service. So what happened from the code flow perspective, I added that in here, right, in requirements. It came through to here. I added the requirement. In add requirement, I have a domain event that publishes. So once that saves to the database, so once it is safely saved to the database, it publishes that event. That event then publishes this object, which is now a query of that data, publishes this actual event to Kafka. Then the view infrastructure over here is listening to that event, right? So it says, oh, I've got the event to process. So then it goes and checks to see if it needs to update the planning item. And then it needs to send the updated requirements. In here, that updated planning item requirements here goes through each of those requirements and adds them in or whatever. And then on complete, if there were requirement changes, it publishes an event. That event is consumed here. This is a mass transit event as well. This is published through RabbitMQ now. So many different technologies at play here. That publishes to mass transit using RabbitMQ right this second. And that gets here, which then pushes, there's a GraphQL WebSocket subscription to listen to that event, right? So when you see that there, all that's just happened, right? So it happens pretty much instantaneously. And that, I mean, that's a local machine, right? So I get that traffic, etc., is going to potentially make that a lot slower. But again, the idea of this system is I'm building this because I want to build it as if I would rebuild a system. And in reality, if you're building a system of this complexity, of this nature, you're going to scale the pieces properly. You're going to make sure the infrastructure's there, that the communications technology is there. And it doesn't matter if this takes a second or two, again, because I've got that continuity, right? That's kind of why I'm focused so hard on this continuity piece, in that I do want to make sure that the user can continue using this application, even if that data isn't quite in the view yet, but is there. And it comes with a lot of power, right? But it comes with a lot of risk because that data might disappear, right? So at some point, I'm going to have to tackle that concept of, okay, well, how do I notify the user? Yes, they've got something, but it might not be available right now, right? Getting a lot of ideas. I believe it's awesome. Thank you. I mean, this is now, I think this is just over 6 months worth of work, spare time. So the view concern here is dealt with. So this again is a consumer. So this is one service, two services in the view. The ticket system right now, the ticket has the consumer and the tickets, and it also has this HTTP piece. That will become a mass transit component once I've got past this phase. So I'm using lots of different technologies and I'm using lots of pieces. Mass transit is really not visible here at this phase, but mass transit is being used in pieces. What will happen is when I do ticketing to planning, so there's a promotion component from ticketing to planning, which right now is an HTTP API. That will get replaced by a mass transit bus message. So I get more resiliency there. I get more reliability, independent deployability as well. So the benefits of this system are I can bring ticketing down. If I actually put feature flags and stuff in front of this stuff, I can actually disable ticketing in the client, bring ticketing down, bring it up and re-enable it. And then again, because I can use subscriptions and stuff from the view perspective, I can actually just publish an event that says the ticketing system is becoming unavailable, and the subscriptions here will actually notify the client, oh, this feature is being disabled. So by the way, you don't have this feature for a while, right? I can actually do it that way. And then I can bring systems down independently of each other. So tenant management, that would be a hard system to bring down because that's kind of the core of everything. And at some point I'll have to build an entire UI around the administration side of the application stack. So for right now, I'm focused on the planning aspect. The concept here is that when you're going to do stories and stuff as a developer, right, you're often using tools like Jira, Monday, Service, not Service, what is it? Brain. Yeah, whatever. There's a lot of tools out there for doing project management stuff and doing stories, etc. So the idea here is what I'm focused on here is the actual planning aspect of the stories. So what will happen is you'll go in here and add requirements, right? So requirement, the button should be blue. Button changes on update when the update occurs. The button color should change from yellow to blue or something like that, right? So eventually be able to add images and artwork and stuff onto these individual requirements. When you hit create on that, right, that is one of the requirements, right? A dialogue should appear. I got a little fly in front of me. Dialogue on failure. When the update fails, it should see a dialogue that reads it broke, right? So again, these are requirements, and the idea is what will happen is when I'm ready to do the story aspect of this, you'll be able to say, okay, now promote this planning item to become a story, right? Or multiple stories. And there'll be a wizard that says, okay, well, so again, the idea is that this is for discussion for the developers at this point. You can go through it, you can say, here's what I'm expecting to happen. Here's the things I expect, add more requirements, etc. So it's kind of a gathering phase. And the idea being that this will allow product teams to kind of analyze the things they need to do before they actually put it in front of developers. And then when they're ready, the developers can review this with them and say, yep, that's one story. And they'll be able to say, okay, well, this requirement and this requirement are part of story 1, and the other requirements are part of story 2. And it will generate the stories to be worked upon in the actual story side of things. So ultimately, you're able to go in here and select ticketing, planning, and stories, right, as a drop down. And you'll be able to, and the idea would be that the entire UI color scheme would change based upon which aspect of the software stack you're in. So I'm focused on the planning thing for right now because it's got a lot of the core aspects I need without having, and it's kind of useful on its own. So if I move towards this as an actual product, it can have its own value without needing the other pieces, right? And the idea will be that you can promote ticketing to planning, planning to stories. So the ticketing aspect is very much required because as a developer, as a business, when you're building software, there's bugs. And they happen. So the idea here would be that the ticketing system would collect tickets, and if a ticket was a little bit more involved, then a ticket could be promoted to a planning item, and it would indicate that. So And again, the reason I'm breaking them down and rather than stuffing them into one system is because then what I can do with each of these components is I can tailor the data and the requirements for those things. If I introduce a new concept down the line, I can introduce a new component and build on those pieces without actually polluting the core of another component, right? So I can promote data, I can do all sorts of things. So that's why I'm focused on this kind of data flow and this distributed nature now, rather than just building something that has all things in it. It does present the chance to be a it does present the chance to grow. If I went with the traditional, here's one application, stick it all in there right now, what I'd find is eventually I'd just be struggling to keep the scale. So, yeah, that's where it's going. So, experimental TypeScript, new quick fixes for React, improved structure view, improvements for GraphQL. That's cool. Version control in editor code review. Nice. New terminal. So there we go. Okay, so the store is in a better place. I think we've fixed the load problem. Now, again, the goal of this would be if someone else changes a requirement or changes a planning item, etc., and adds some detail to it or whatever, right? And I've got to go down the entire path of permissions of all those sorts of things. That's going to be a challenge unto itself, right? This notification would tell me, hey, this, by the way, this has actually changed, and I should be able to navigate to the thing. So each one of these has a target identifier, a category, and a description, and an intended user, right? So right now, if I assign a planning item, this is assigned to, actually, I noticed that these aren't on the sub view, but anyway, if I don't assign the story, it won't appear in this view because that person doesn't get that planning item. So I've got to kind of look at those use cases and permissions, etc. This date, by the way, is the idea is that every single item, a ticket, a planning item, not a requirement because a requirement is nested under a planning item. Initiatives is going to be many planning items grouped under one thing. But everything will have a review date, right? And what will happen is at the end of the day, when a review date has passed, a report will be prepared, and basically what you'll be able to do is go into this planning item and say, hey, I care about this. I want to subscribe to this planning item. So if you and I are working on something and we're in different departments, you want to be told things change about this planning item, right? If it's expired, if it's past its review date, or if things have been added to it, you might want a daily or a weekly summary of the planning item. You say, hey, I care about this thing. And then when it's past its review date, it will tell you. So the idea being that, I in a lot of places I've worked, there's been this, hey, where are we with that thing? Oh, do you remember where what we ended up on that? Who's responsible for this, right? So the goal of this system is very much about visibility, not necessarily about tattletaling or rooting people out. It's more about, hey, this requirement, we said it will be done by the end of this week, is passed. Where are we with it? What do we need to do? Do we need to update the review date? And if that review date changes, those people will be told about that as well, right? They'll be told the review date, by the way, was pushed to the 10th of October or whatever, right? So the goal is very much about visibility. And my entire purpose of building the system is to make sure that people that care about the tracking of work, the visibility of work, the sharing of work can be seeing all that, but developers can just be going, I got work. And the developer view can be much simpler and be like, here's the thing you've got to do. Go off and work on it, right? This is not open source right now. No, this is very much closed source because I do intend to make this a product. I stream a lot of it, and I share a lot, and I do open source components of the project. So I have open source 2 libraries so far. You'd think I know how to type that by now. So Mediator Outbox and Kafka extensions. So this is a set of wrappers around Kafka that make handling the topics and consuming the events simpler and cleaner, right? So if you want to receive events or you want to provide an outbox for it, etc., that's there. I need to build a SQL outbox for Kafka right this second. And the other library is Mediator Outbox. This one is yeah, the reason I'm keeping this all closed source is because obviously there's a lot of coding here that I'm spending a lot of dedicated time to, and I do want to make this a product. And if I open source or share this code, it is a lot of work that I will not yeah. So where is it? Tenant management. So in tenant management, I have this use case for registering a new organization, right? And this is transaction scoped. The reason being that several of these things happen when you register a new customer, right? So first you register the tenant with an address. It has to store some data. And then you register the user. And then you associate that user with a tenant. And then you register the user with a provider, which is actually going to Auth0 and saying, hey, create this user for me, by the way, right? If any one of these fails, the entire thing has to roll back, right? Because otherwise the data is going to be bad. So the challenge there is if this does what it needs to do, right, and saves changes, then those things will be picked up and handled now, and changes will have filtered through the system, right? So I want everything to have happened before I actually save the changes, right? And I don't want to be in each one of these, I don't want to be publishing those domain events independently and being saved. So everything's wrapped up as a transaction. But I also then need an outbox for messages that happen internally. So Mediator is being used for the domain events. So a domain event is an event that is published within the application, within the component itself, essentially, but actually more particularly within the application, right? The domain, right? So I can listen to those events and do different things within the application itself. I can react to things happening within the application. So if there's a side effect or something, I can actually create code that is specific for that function. But the outbox here is all the notifications that happen. So when that thing changes, it publishes the domain event. This domain event is the notification here, or the outbox, and then this is processed by a different background process. So they're kind of out of step a little bit, but it's working, and it's reliable and it's resilient, right? So if something crashes in here, any events that published within the course of doing the thing that was doing, they don't get lost. So that's one of the libraries I published as part of this. So I do commit to saying if I build something that's useful as a component, that is useful to building applications, I will build and the open promise is if you see something that I'm building that is kind of useful independently of my system, all you have to do is call it out and I'll do the work to make sure it's an open source library. So I am sharing individual things that I'm building outside of in the project. I am using this one. I am dog fooding this project. So Mediator Outbox has a few pieces and there's a SQL outbots. The benefit is you can actually build a separate service to do the processing. You don't actually need to have it all done within the same, within the web service. So you can actually scale that out as well. And then we did do mediator sagas. So this was an interesting one. So there is 3 libraries technically. This is an interesting one in that what happens is it allows you to say, okay, well, if several of these events happen, do this other thing. So you can actually create a long-running process that's watching for a set of events to happen, and so I could use that as well. And if I need, oh well, if it updated this and this changed and this changed and this changed, oh, I need to do something there, so I can actually create a saga within there. So we created mediator sagas as well. But that's kind of more of a thought experiment, and it needs a bit more work. But it is a potential, right? So we can actually react to things changing in the system if we want to. I think it'll swallow that fly. So there we go. There's a few of the things I have built that are available to you if you want to go and look at them. There is a video on YouTube. All of my videos go to YouTube, but there is actually a video which I have not linked to, complementing this this library as well, showing you how to use it and how to set it up. Okay. So what do I need to do next? Well, I need to figure out what the load case is. Like, how do I reload? What do I do? Because right now I mark the item as having changed, right? So it has pending updates. Do I want to? And here's a concept. What I could do. So right now this has a target identifier. So this says, okay, well, the requirements have changed for this planning item. But if I actually notified that the requirement had changed and tracked an individual requirement change, then I could say, okay, when everything's in place, when I've been told by the back end that the entity has changed and all the items that I've got have been updated, then I can reload it automatically. I don't need to actually, I can reload it and set its state back to clean. What benefit does that have? I don't think that has any benefit, because I'm not missing anything right now, right? That's the reality is I'm not missing anything. Hi, Shy. How you doing? You well rested? So, some things I need to learn. Doing good, I slept for more than 12 hours. I can't remember the last time I slept for more than 5 hours.
12 hours. Nice. Well, you needed the rest. So I think what I might do is kind of. There's only one person I know on Twitch that does NGRX store stuff. I might reach out to him and see if when he's streaming next. I clearly needed it. Yeah. Yeah, if you're sleeping for 12 hours, your body's telling you, yeah, you probably need that. If it wasn't for my boyfriend, I would have gone to bed even sooner. Yeah, he kept you up, right? Finance Singularity might be another if he isn't the one you're thinking of. Does he do NGRX stuff? Every time I see Finance Singularity, he's doing C++ and stream stuff. Because what I'm looking, I mean, I might just take the plunge and buy the Pluralsight course, and see if I can watch a few of the courses and see if I can find some best practices. Because again, a lot of this stuff it's like, oh well, look, you've got a widget and you're going to add a widget. You're going to add this thing and you're tracking this widget. Well, I'm doing something more complicated than that, right? Am I using it correctly? Am I actually going against the grain here? Is there a better design? You know, there's all sorts of questions I have because I want to set good standards now while I'm building the application starts, right? Because once I start to get into larger pieces, because the next step from here, by the way, is adding in image uploads, and that'll be talking about abstracting cloud storage, right? So I'll be developing something that says, I'll store locally, store AWS, store Azure. So file uploads, and then notes. And once I've got notes in place, these items are pretty much in a good place. Yeah. He needed me for a stream. It's quiet, but he didn't need me for a puzzle. Okay, nice. It's a Python project, which uses Angular, I believe. It's a construction logistics management app. Right. He's starting getting a bit burned out from it, as that is all his day job, so he now does OBS stuff on stream before doing that. Okay. Yeah, I know he used to stream doing the day job stuff. And then he did the OBS stuff and just blew up. But that's cool. Just checking his girlfriend Jairus, and there is some posts in there from it. Okay. I'll I know BBB. BBB is kind of the person I went to for NGRX last time. But I don't know if he's used signalStores and stuff. And I'm trying to basically do something new to me. This technology is relatively new because Angular 17 brought signals. So the benefit of doing this, right, by the way, is that I can have the actual page fully react to a change of data, right? So if something comes in the background, it will actually update a piece of the data on the screen, right? So that refresh button, if I go and add a planning item, new planning item, let's do fourth planning item. I like how it'll let me add 5 digits. That's cool. This control needs some more work as well. So when I create and I go into the fourth planning item, right, you see the refresh button appeared? That's because that one popped in, right? So there's a lot of benefit to using these these signal stores. It's all pretty new.
Sorry. I do apologize if the cough has been coming through the stream. It's not what I intended, but I've been trying. Okay. So, progress. I feel a little better. In so much as I understand how to access the data. Do I think it's the right thing? No, I think I'm still missing some stuff here. This is interesting. This kind of conjoined state object thing that you get to use. At first, I thought it would be changing. It would kind of give me a picture of the data that I have in this state, and it's not. It's literally, oh, by the way, it's all these shapes at once. Oh, I need to do. Do that. Set pending. Technically, everything's pending until I've fulfilled it. So when you patch the state, you can just pass it all the different actions to take to set the state, and because they're all working on different versions of the state. Yeah, I will get better. I will get better with it. Okay, so what is tomorrow? Hi, Sorcery. How you doing? Hello, hello. You catch me right at the end. I'm doing okay. The cough is still here. You'll hear my voice, but I'm getting there. So, and I feel a bit better than I did at the beginning of the stream today because I was starting to worry that I'd wasted a month. No worries, Shy. I'm about to finish up. Enjoy your game. Thank you very much for coming and hanging out. I appreciate you. So I have it kind of back where I did want it, but now things are kind of working, right? So I can go into a planning item and I can create a requirement, and this is the button is blue. When the screen is activated, the button will show as yellow. But when the thing happens... So realistically, I should change some of these controls to be more... No worries, Shy, thank you. More actual writable areas. This is meant to be a title, but when I hit create, it gets added in here. What we'll see is eventually a notification will happen. That's telling me that the full circle happened. All that data is retained. Yeah. Thank you, Shai. I appreciate that. Right. So we do have some functionality. It is working exactly as I intend. Again, this is for continuity over everything else. It's not actually meant to do anything special because if I refresh the screen, it's gone. Right. So it's more, if a user's just going through and doing things, you don't want them to be prevented from continuing through the application because you're waiting for data to load. So some progress there. It is working. Tomorrow I'm going to focus on storage. So I'm gonna look at uploading files, and we'll start with Azure and try and create an abstraction around the data storage so we can swap in local storage, Azure, and AWS. We'll see how that goes. So that will be the goal for tomorrow. Once file uploading is working, notes will be the next thing. Right. So, yeah, lots to come. But then I started to build this out, and this is now in a good place. So let's go Can you update a database after it's been created? In terms of this create. So, yeah, that's not fine. So, are you asking specifically about this? Are you asking about in general changing the database? Okay. Yes, you can update a database. So you want to change the shape of it. So, what you can do is, right. So what you'll do there to get that to work, by the way, is you'll go and let's say you add a new model, right? So you add a new model for recipes. A recipe. And it has public int ID, public string name, right? Then what you do is you go and add that to your context, right? Public db set recipe, right? And then you'll create your migration, right? So if I go here and entity framework call, I've got the benefit of the tooling, but you know what the migration does. And I do add recipes. I call it add recipes, right? That will create a migration in theory. What? What you say? Startup project API. Oh, there you go. So then it will create a new migration for you, right? And that will now add that table. And this works for if you're dropping columns, if you're changing data. You'll learn some lessons along the way doing migrations, right? Migrations can be very finicky. You probably don't want to put, what I would do is for that one, I would create a recipe and then I would do a recipe ingredient table. And that would add, I would have an int ID of its own. It would add a public int recipe ID. And it would add a public int ingredient ID, right? And then you could have a public float or string or whatever you want to do for the measurement. Measure, right? Whatever you wanted to do to store fluid ounces, cups, etc., you could do that. And I'd create a separate table. And then when you add an ingredient, when you add an item to the recipe, I would have, so the recipe would just be a name. And you could have a public int rating or something like that. So you could say 4 stars, 5 stars. Oh, that would be that'd be a bit smaller. So yeah. So you'd end up with this would be a many to many relationship. This would be a one to many with its ingredients. Yeah. So so if you have the ingredient, you'd have an ID for the ingredient. So like a recipe could have like, this could look like 1 1 1 1 1 2 1 1. No, there'll be 2 3, right? 4 would be 1 4, right? So yeah, so you can definitely do that. There you go. No worries. Okay, so let's go right out. I've got to get going. I'm going to go get breakfast. And yeah, I don't see anyone streaming that is even adjacent to what I'm doing. Sad no one in YouTube today. Thanks for the co-working stream as always. Much busy morning has been very yes. Thank you, OneLine. Thank you for always hanging out. I do appreciate you being in here, even if it's working along with me. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for the stream. Glad you're feeling better. Thank you, Sorcery. I will look forward to your stream. I've been kind of lurking. I've been saying hello in your stream, and then you've got kind of busy, and I kind of lurked for the most part. So I do apologize. I kind of like to be chatty in streams, but I don't always have the chance. So, and you've been doing fine with the the level of people in there. So. Let's go raid Fullbots. I don't know what Fullbots is working on now, but maybe his game. No, maybe he's putting green things all on the bottom of the screen. But let's raid Fullbots. Let's go say hi. Fullbots has an awesome looking game that he works on sometimes. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining me. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow for some data storage. Take care all. Bye.